Folks, just been joined or have already been participating in a Zoom call with Lauren Patterson away up in Newton Abbey. Lauren's a member of our congregation with Craig and her two daughters. So, Lauren, good to have you on with us today. The reason I'm choosing to talk to Lauren today is because Lauren recently started working for Open Doors, but I don't want to tell too much of that story because I want Lauren to have a go at sharing that herself. Lauren, maybe you could join me in this conversation. Maybe begin by telling us a wee bit about yourself.
Yeah, okay. Well, I'm Lauren and I'm married to Craig, and I've got two daughters, Phoebe, who's 4, and Alice, who's 1.5. And I've been coming to Kirkpatrick for about 4 years now. And I originally did law and trained to be a solicitor and worked in that for a few years, but it just never really felt right. So last year I started working for Open Doors as their team administrator.
Brilliant. Lauren, there's a bit of a story, bit of a journey you were on that brought you to working for Open Doors. And it's, as I've spoken to you, I've really seen it as a story of God's leading and God's guiding. I wonder, can you take a moment to share a little bit about how God has brought you to the point where you now work for Open Doors?
Yeah. Well, the first time that I came across Open Doors was whenever I was about 17 and I was studying the history of the persecuted church in RE class. And the teacher had brought in some literature from Open Doors. I think it was prayer diaries and magazines. And I just remember these two Sunday school teachers standing behind bars, and that image really stuck with me. I don't think I'd even been aware that persecution still happens nowadays at that time. And to be honest, I just really became interested in Open Doors from then on. I signed up for their prayer diaries and their magazines and just followed them over the years. A little bit later, after I had been working in the legal sector for a while, I had my first child, Phoebe, and I had a wee chance just to step back from the law when I was on maternity. And I just remember this real sense of discontent about my role. It never really had felt right, even after all those years and hard work. And I just remember speaking to Craig about it, and he encouraged me to kind of find out what I was interested in. And I mentioned Open Doors. I said, I would love to do something with my skills that I felt inspired by like that. And he had said, well, why don't you write to them for work experience? I didn't really do anything about it at that point, but I did bring it to God in prayer and seek his guidance. It wasn't until probably half a year later that we had moved back home to Northern Ireland, and I was still really seeking God's guidance on where he wanted me to be, or would there be something else for me. And my sister invited me to a church in Ballymoney called the Connect Christian Fellowship. She was just trying new churches in the area, and I just went for this one day. Neither of us knew what it was going to be about. And that particular day, one of the members of that congregation was actually being prayed for at the front of the church. His name was Chris, and he was due to start a new job with Open Doors the very next day. And I was just so inspiring to hear about his life and how God had been working through him and through the prayer and petition of other people to lead him to this point. And I had obviously been thinking about writing to the Open Doors at that time and been praying about it, and I felt that that was God sort of leading me and prompting me towards making some sort of move. So following that, I wrote a letter to Open Doors, or an email, and I was invited in by this lady called Lorraine, who headed the team up at the time. And it was just a very brief meeting, and it was clear that there weren't really any jobs for me at that time. And to be honest, after that meeting, I left feeling a little deflated and just wondering, what was that all about? And maybe even a bit embarrassed. I didn't really tell anyone about it. Christoph, it was Alice's baptism at Kirkpatrick Memorial. And there was a moment in the minister's room just 10 minutes before where, we had a little catch up. And I was just going through turmoil at that time, just thinking about, the returning to work. And I just felt like I didn't know what was happening with my future. And I don't think that you were really aware of very much of that at all. But I would say that God was really working in that moment, even just in these small conversations. And really the manner and the questions that you asked me, about my work and where I was at and everything, they kind of cut straight to the issue. Um, and I hadn't even planned on being honest or saying really any of how I felt. But in that moment, I really felt God was working through you to make me feel how much I was loved by him and cherished and important, and that he knew that I did have hopes and desires for the future, and that he was with me in that. So I suppose really after that, I didn't really have the same sense of urgency about getting out of my situation and changing my circumstances. I just had a real sense of peace that he was with me through it. I got in touch with Chris, who was now working there, and he met up with me, and it transpired that yes, there was going to be a job coming up. And in fact, it was exactly the days, and in terms of the practical side of it, it was perfect for me. So really after that, whenever the job came out, I obviously applied for it, and whenever I got offered it, there was a lot going on in my head because I had worked very hard for the legal side of things. I'd really put in a lot of years of effort, and then to do something completely different, I really wanted to know it was the right thing. But as I was able to look back over the past few years, and even back to studying in RE class, I could see that God had clearly put this in my heart, and that this was his plan for me. And I just went for it, and it's really been such a change for me. I've felt both it being a blessing and a privilege to work there, and God's leading. He's just been one step ahead of me at each point on the way. And even on the days whenever I wasn't sure what was happening, I really have felt that I've been learning to wait on the Lord a lot more. So,
Brilliant.
yeah, I'm
Brilliant.
enjoying it.
Lauren, thank you for sharing that, because it's just wonderful to hear you thinking about God's leading in your life, being so open to him, and then finding that he really did lead you. Just one last question in 30 seconds. Tell us why it's important that we as a church family continue to partner with Open Doors.
Well, our church family is further than Kirkpatrick Memorial. Everyone who has given their life to Christ and accepted him into their life is our brother and sister, and we're all part of the body of Christ. And I really feel that it's such a privilege to be able to pray alongside our brothers and sisters over the world who are risking their lives to follow him. But it's also a two-way thing, because out of our support and our prayer and giving to them, they also encourage and strengthen our faith. I do think that it kind of wakens us up and encourages us to be a bit more bold in our everyday lives for Christ.